Hi. Before we begin, just so you know you're not alone on this journey, at papernapkinwisdom.com, we've got free tools designed to help leaders like you find clarity and momentum. No pressure, just support. You can grab them anytime. You can even grab them from social media. The link's in the bio.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 298. Have you ever noticed how often we tie our worth to outcomes? Sales, goals hit, numbers on a page, KPI, leading and lagging indicators, and yet the more we grip, the more anxious we can become. What if the real shift in leadership is not about controlling results, but about grounding in the authenticity and letting go of the rest? That's exactly what today's guest, Juan DeAngulo, brings us. Juan is a veteran investor, systems thinker, and founder of Inselligence. He's scaled a billion-dollar platform, guided startups across continents, and built cultures rooted in clarity and discipline. But perhaps what makes his wisdom most powerful is his willingness to share the personal cost of leadership. The anxiety, the panic attacks, the relentless pressure, and how he rebuilt himself through authenticity and release. As you listen to this wisdom, you might start to wonder about what might change for you if you lived from this truth. How would your business, your leadership, or even your health shift if you measured yourself by alignment and not just outcome? As you listen, I invite you to hold that question close. Let's listen in. Juan DeAngulo, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you, Govind. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
I'm thrilled to have you on. So you shared an interesting napkin with me, and I want to jump right into it. And like all of them, there's significance in all of it. So you said, I am true to myself and release the outcome. And you've dated it, 12, 21, 23. So for people who aren't following, that's December 21st, 2023, I assume, not 1923. I don't think you coined it then. Yeah, I mean, you look great for your age if that's the case. So Juan, why did you share that with me?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's such a cool concept behind your podcast. Having been on a few of these, I really found it very thought-provoking to have to conceptualize everything to something you can write in a napkin. And this was really a culmination of a lot of inner work that I went through starting in 2019. It doesn't really end, but this was a real pivotal point in my life where I came to this understanding that I needed to just be true to myself and not worry so much about the outcomes. And I think for all of us type A, highly driven people, that can be a challenging reality.
Yeah. So let me ask you, what happened in 2019 that turned the lights on in the room?
Yeah. So I was, what was I? 2019, 6 years ago. I was about 45 years old, in the throes of high growth in my prior business. Just driving like I had been my whole life. And night before a big real estate conference in Minneapolis, where I was the keynote speaker, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with what I now know was an all-out panic attack. And very foreign to me. I had never, even had anything close to that. No real reason why it came at that moment, other than in retrospect, I understand that I had just brought myself to the end of myself, and it really started an amazing journey of discovery, mostly self discovery.
That's amazing. So describe that feeling for people who don't understand what a panic attack feels like. What woke you up about it? Well, how did you wake up? What were you feeling?
I mean, I called my wife and I told her, I said, if you don't help me calm down, I need to call 911 because I couldn't sit still. I had to walk around the hotel room and it just felt like I was on guard. Like everything felt like a threat. Everything felt, just a very high degree of anxiety. I had a lot of pounding in my chest. It didn't, for one second, I thought, am I having a heart attack? But nothing hurt. And it was just really over time, I became a lot more aware of it because they didn't go away for 7 months. It was a lot of work, and we can get into that some more, but it almost felt like a cold energy. I mostly felt it like behind my arms, behind my neck, which has to do with our limbic system and our fight or flight. But that's what it felt like. It just felt like everything felt like a threat. I couldn't think of anything without seeing a catastrophic outcome.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's not just being afraid of the outcome. It's the outcome's catastrophic. It's like
Yeah.
it's end of life, end of world. Everything is collapsing all the time. And it all the time, right? It's about everything. It's about you said your wife was there. It's about your relationship. It's about her. It's about the kid. It's about everything. Everything's falling apart.
Everything. And as I started a journey. My older brother, who's always been there for me, he's kind of a quiet guy, very contrary to me. But every time I've been in pivotal moments, he's been someone that has sort of been a guiding light. And he said to me, "You need to go read." Um, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. Joe Dispenza, "Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself," and that's really what started me on a journey of meditation, of some time for myself, and becoming aware of my thoughts. And prior to that, I remember many times telling my wife I would pay to have a switch that turns off my brain, because I was always on, always on. And as I began that process of self-discovery and just being with my thoughts, as simple as when I was in the shower, I realized I was playing out future conversations and I was playing out all these things that my brain had become so accustomed to doing, that when the fight or flight gets turned on almost permanently, well, what you're playing out is absolute threat, right? And as I started to experience coming back to homeostasis and coming back to a calm state, I learned to not basically pay attention to myself when I was triggered. It's sort of almost a weird thing to say, but I learned that when I was feeling triggered, whatever, I wouldn't make any decision. I wouldn't trust myself basically in terms of what I was playing out because I knew that catastrophic outcome that I was playing out was not my own wisdom. It was just the fight or flight playing itself out and messing with my brain.
So let's back up. The business that you're running at the time is a real estate
Hmm.
investment platform, right?
That's right.
And so tell me about the platform because here's what's really interesting. You're talking about disaster, your mind going to disaster, but I think people need to understand why are you playing it out that way? Did you why did you put yourself in a place where you're always thinking about the worst possible outcome?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So we started the platform in 2012. 2019, we were at a real inflection point. 7 years in, we were probably managing probably a couple of billion. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but it was a significant amount for us. We still had not reached that inflection point where we could have a lot of senior management. So, it's up to the entrepreneur to wear a gazillion hats where they need to be plugged. And so while running the day to day, you're also responsible for this fiduciary duty of making good investment decisions. And as a part of making good investment decisions, at least up until that point, I had been someone that consumed a lot of information, right? I watched the news and I read the Wall Street Journal and I listened to all the talking heads and I consumed all this information trying to put myself in the best place possible to make the best decision possible as an investment committee member and an asset management committee member. Um, And we were at a real critical point. But I think in retrospect, it's not just what was going on at that moment. It's also how much I had worn myself down over my whole career, burning the candle on both ends, raising a family, etc. And I remember that in those days, I think this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. I do remember that the yield curve inverted for a very short period of time. And I think that was sort of that bell that my mind was going, oh my gosh, if we have a recession, we have all these deals going, we have these portfolios, and we're at an inflection point. What could happen? And I think that was sort of the trigger.
Yeah. And let's also remember that you said that you started the business in 2012, right?
Yeah.
So we had just come out of 2008 where there was that massive inflection point where the yield curves didn't just invert, but the market went upside down and
Yep.
evaporated. Entire portfolios were evaporated in 2008. So that happened. That was a real event. You're coming into the market just as we're recovering and healing from all of that. And
Hmm.
then these other things happen. So I think it's important for us to relate to why you were feeling the way you were. And I think that's really important. Um,
Yes, yes, yes. But if I may, I'm going to give you just one quick but. When this first all started to happen, the first place I went to find meaning was in this story that we're talking about, right? What was going
wow.
on in my external circumstances. But yet I had partners, right? Business partners that were not in the same boat. They had also gone through '08. Some of them had been more affected than I had in '08 and '09. Because the old saying goes, who didn't lose money in '08? Whoever didn't have any, right? And when I went through '08, I was an employee at a large platform managing third party money, and I was not personally affected. Some of my business partners were, but yet they were not reacting in the same way, right? So there were definitely things going on in the way that I was wired, which goes back to the paper napkin, right? Of being true to yourself and releasing the outcome, that basically set myself up to have this reaction.
So here's what's interesting to me. You say be true to yourself and release the outcome, but one of the things you shared about that came out of the immediate aftermath of the panic attack was learning not to pay attention to yourself.
Hmm.
And you didn't trust yourself. So how challenging was it to cross that chasm from learning to be true to yourself, like your real self,
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
smoke and mirror, not the Iron Man suit that you're wearing in front of a keynote address, but
Hmm.
being really true to yourself, coming from a place where you had to shut off paying attention to yourself, and you actually wanted to pay for a switch to turn your brain off, which is the exact opposite of what you achieved, right?
Yeah. I think it all starts with understanding what the different parts of ourself that we have, right? And I mean, one of the great things that I learned through this through Joe Dispenza. I mean, that was sort of, he's not the only one, but it was a great teacher for me in learning about my subconscious and the way that our self identity is wired over the first 35 years of our life, and started to explore some of my early childhood experiences and my teenage experiences, and having been bullied in school, and then how I found identity mostly through athletics, right? I became a nationally recognized a tennis player when I was growing up, and I was one of the best soccer players in a country like Colombia, where soccer is like a religion.
Mhm.
And so I found acceptance through my outcomes, my athletic performance, my grades in school, and so those were the things that gained me acceptance. And so anyway, I could go more into that, but basically, it set me up to build my life based on external expectations, and building my life assuming that what my outcomes were was what determined my self-worth. And that's really how I was wired. So when I came to this place where my nervous system said no more, and I started this process of self-discovery, I had to start to understand those building blocks of my identity, how they had been built, and start to reconstruct them and start to have, for example, the concept of having compassion with myself, the concept of having empathy with what I was going through, and then giving myself space to ask myself, what do I really want? And I remember at one point it was very uncomfortable, because when you literally start to rebuild core portions of your psyche, it's extremely uncomfortable. And I'm an avid golfer now. I compete as an amateur, and there were moments where I asked myself, why do I even play golf? Do I really like golf, or am I doing it because I'm fulfilling some sort of pre-wired need to compete? And I remember looking at my wife one day and saying, I hope you like me on the other side, because I don't even know who I'm going to be on the other side. So it was a very uncomfortable process. But in the end, to answer your question, sorry for being long-winded there, I started to understand the difference between when my thoughts were being guided by this old wiring and when I was being guided by my true self. And that's the ultimate form of self-discovery. Like, who really am I? What do I really want? What really fulfills me? And then having the courage to say, I am willing to change my external circumstances so that my life can align with my true self. And yeah. That takes
Yeah, so
guts.
this is such a big idea, and I love the fact that you're going there, because it's really important. I mean, this is something that a lot of people don't understand, and you said it in this way, and I prefer to refer to the unconscious mind as the unconscious mind as opposed to the subconscious mind. It's not a subservient partner to the conscious mind. It's a silent partner. It's a partner that communicates in symbols and is a powerful ally if we let it be. One of the things that I really love about Joe Dispenza's book that you refer to, right, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, is the catch line of the sentence is how to lose your mind and create a new one. And he really talks about this idea that your thoughts become your reality. That's what you started with right away, right? That every thought that we have, thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, actions lead to results. And the results are sort of like you have to let go of them. It's really what we control. And you really started to focus on that. You really started to focus on what you're thinking about, and understanding that you need to change the way you think about the world. When you change the way you look at the world you look at changes, and you change the way you looked at the world by changing the way you thought about it and rewiring it. I think it's really powerful. Did you do this with a guide? Did you do this on your own? Are you a self-taught person, or how did you approach that rewiring?
Wow, yeah. I mean, so Joe Dispenza has been a consistent. I've been to two of his advanced retreats. I went to one December of 19, and I started to do all his meditations. I've tried other forms of meditation since then, and I really enjoy his, mostly because they seem to have a purpose, and I think he utilizes music and other things to help you with your brain waves, and you start to understand about getting out of beta and going into alpha and into other forms of brain waves for rest. But I've definitely had a lot of professional help. I mean, first and foremost, my wife, right? Like she has been an unbelievable partner for me throughout this process, in giving me space, and in supporting me, and listening to me. So she's been absolutely unbelievable. I also sought professional help, and I've had a couple of different forms of professional help that helped me along the way to do some of that self-discovery, especially when you start to understand. So there's different forms of the professional help, right? So on the one hand, more of somebody that understands the psyche and helps to guide you to understand how those building blocks are built, and how you can start to address them and understand what's driving some of the things that are going on in your mind. I think doing that by yourself, I think, would be highly unrealistic. And I think part of self-awareness and the process of discovery is having the humility to know that we all need help, and there's no shame in that. And I think that that's absolutely important. I'm grateful that we're living in a time where mental health and seeking help is no longer seen with so much of a taboo as it used to be when I was a kid. I think that that's super important. But I've also sought other types of expertise in things like understanding generational trends, right? Like really having people that can help you to understand epigenetics and generational outcomes that can affect us, whether we're aware of them or not. They are real, and I think that those have been also extremely helpful to me. Things like family constellations and other things that we could explore. But at the end of the day, all of that leads to me, which is what I think the paper napkin is all about. Is underpinning that paper napkin, which is self love, right? I mean, I think
Mhm.
loving ourselves to me is the ultimate form of acceptance and being true to yourself. You can't be true to yourself if you don't love the self that you believe you are. And releasing the outcome is not caring about what other people think, not caring about whether I win or whether I lose. Why do we care if we win or lose? Because what are other people going to think? Who are the best athletes under pressure? The ones that don't have their identity wrapped up in the outcome, and then they don't get nervous, right? They don't have as much anxiety. So I think that for me, that was sort of encapsulated. That's what all that professional help led me to.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing I do want to talk about real quickly before we move off it, because a lot of people are going to hear the word epigenetics and they're not really going to understand what that means. One of the things that scientists have proven is that, mice, you could take a mama rat and give it a shock in the corner of a box, and its offspring will avoid that corner of the box. There's no learning that has gone on in that corner of the box for them, but they will avoid that corner of the box. That genetically, that the trauma, the learning has passed down in a way that
Mhm.
that offspring doesn't understand. And understanding that these old patterns may not be apparent to us, but are still there is really, really powerful. And understanding that also gives you a pathway to find yourself. I think all of that's really, really key. It's fun that you talk about this idea that some athletes become beholden to the outcome. And there's this great piece by Kobe where he's sitting there talking to a BET reporter when they had Black Entertainment Television and it just came out, and they did these mentorship series. And he talked about failure doesn't exist. And he really just talks about how if you're in love with the process, if you're in love with the moment, if you're in love with being in that moment and being all in on the moment, the outcome just doesn't matter. And it takes care of itself because you're focused on the moment so intently. That's along the lines of what you're saying. Being true to yourself allows you to love, loving yourself allows you to be true to yourself and really be equanimous with what's happening right now, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. 100%. And you thought about Kobe. I'll tell you the one that I think about. It's one of my all-time favorite press conferences, and I think that most people that heard it probably uh, just it went right over their head unless you've lived it, right? And it was Scotty Scheffler after
Yeah.
the Masters a few years ago when he was going through the woes of putting, which anybody that's been a golfer understands what woes of putting can be, and it's all right here. And he went through a really tough time, right? And this guy's the best golfer in the world, approaching Tiger-esque type stats, Tiger Woods type stats over the last few years. And the reporter asked him, like how do you deal with this situation that you're dealing with, where you're missing 3 footers, and which for a professional golfer, it's like awful. And his response was awesome. He said, "I'm secure in who I am. I'm
Right.
secure in who I am. I know that who I am is when I go home, my wife, my family, and I'm secure in who I am." And to me, that safety of knowing who you are and loving yourself and accepting yourself allows you to release the outcome. Of course, you want to win the golf tournament. Of course, you want to be successful in whatever you're doing. But the outcome can't dictate your self worth. And that to me is such a fine line that determines whether or not you hold on to tight or you don't.
Yeah. You've talked about the support of your wife repeatedly. and how
Mhm.
important. I mean, even if you're just listening to this and you're not watching Juan's face when I'm talking about this, he just lights up. There's a
Yeah.
deep change in your face, just the way you looked when
Mhm.
I brought up this subject. How how vital was it for you that you had that partnership through this transition?
I mean, you're going to make me break down here. When I look at my life, I don't know exactly where it came from. I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But even as a young guy, I always knew that who I married was going to dictate a lot about what my life looked like. And I had a couple of serious relationships that at the end of the day did not work out. And I remember being in college, and being at church one day, and I remember this really simple concept that this lady talked about, which was that the secret to a happy marriage was a simple math formula, which is 1 + 1 = 1. And and I never forgot that, and it made me be very sort of conscientious and purposeful. Actually, my friends would give me a hard time because they would say, dude, just date, stop being so intense about it. But I just knew that I didn't want to end up in a relationship based on codependency, right? I really wanted to find someone that would want to be by my side and I would be by their side, right? And instead of one trying to dominate the other, play games, them looking to fulfill themselves in me or vice versa, and then what you create is a relationship of not a relationship of equals. And I was extremely lucky that my wife and I found each other. We've been together for 25 years now, and she's genuinely my best friend. And I don't know how you can live a truly fulfilled life if you can't come home and feel like you can be vulnerable and you can be yourself, especially when you go through something like this, right?
Mm.
She's gone through her own process herself as well, in a different way. And so being there for each other and genuinely being there for what you're going to give to the other person and not for what you're going to get, I think is that foundation, right? And she has supported me. And I mean, when you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be crazy by definition, right? I mean, I've
Yeah.
moved her around. We picked up and left Miami when my kids were little, and we moved to Chicago, and we had been there for 4 years, and we love Chicago. But then I had an opportunity to go to Houston, and she's always just been my biggest advocate. And what we've built together, and she's allowed me to go do what I did, and while she did an amazing job raising our kids. So, I mean, I could talk about this forever, but I think it's the most pivotal decision that I ever made was who I was fortunate enough to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah, I don't think it was just luck. What does 1 + 1 = 1 mean to you?
I think about my brother again. I bring up my older brother, who ended up being in not a very happy marriage for 10 years. When he got married before me, and at my wedding, he was the best man, and he gave the toast. And at the time, I was not aware of what he was going through. And his toast was, "Be in it for what you can give, not what you can get." And I think that's another form of saying 1 + 1 = 1, right? I think that when we date, we discover a lot by contrast. So, sort of like in life, right? The best learning experiences are when things don't go well. Because when things don't go well, you don't learn about the pitfalls, right? The most I ever learned about real estate investing was by looking at deals that were broken and understanding what was missed in the underwriting, what risk was not taken into account. Like I always told young analysts, Excel never loses money, right? So you've got to understand what really is what drives success. And so I think when we have relationships that don't work, what we take away is, okay, that is not good for me. Doesn't mean that it's good or bad. It's just not good for me. And then it's sort of the same as getting to know yourself, right? Understanding this is what I'm looking for, right? And I knew it. Like I after my last relationship in college, which I really ended up hurting someone, not purposefully, but by ending up not ending up together. I really didn't want to go through that again. And I said, I am not going to get involved just to not be alone. right? So I guess that's really the way to say it. I think 1+1 = 1. It's two people that are perfectly happy being alone, finding each other and choosing to be together. That
Yeah.
might be the best way to summarize it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And one of the philosophies that my wife Stacy and I have is 100% zero. You know, it's not 50-50. It's 100% zero. I'm just here because I want to be here,
Yep.
and I want to do.
Love that.
Um, just so loving yourself, you found your way to loving yourself from that really scary place. And I know that Joe Dispenza has some tools along that did really well, that are really great. But there's another part of this that I think a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this and saying, release the outcome. I've got 3-year goals. I got 5-year goals. I got 10-year goals. I've got a BHAG. I've got a this. I've got my team's got rocks. What are you talking about? Release the outcome. I want the freaking outcome. The outcome's got to happen. And and you're in asset management space. Your ass is in a sling if the asset's not, if the outcome, it doesn't matter. So you're not saying results don't matter, but you're saying the outcome doesn't. The words are important. So what are you talking about releasing the outcome?
Yeah, releasing the outcome is I'm not holding on to the outcome, right? I think when we're holding on to tight, I think about Top Gun, Maverick, and Goose, and you're holding on to tight. If anybody's a Top Gun lover, I think that's what it means, right? If all I'm thinking about is, this deal's got to hit a 2x, this deal's got to hit a 2x, I've got to hit my 18% IRR. Things never go as planned. I mean, I think any entrepreneur by this point knows that. Nothing ever goes as planned, right? So, in order to navigate those curves along the way, those waves that come your way, um, in order to truly be in the moment, you have to be free to be able to tap into your own wisdom and your own experience and make the best decision with the information available at that moment. And if at that moment what you're thinking about is putting the weight of the outcome on the decision, then the anxiety, the stress, the nerves are going to take over, and you might end up with the outcome, right? But outcomes have external circumstances that affect them. There's a lot of things that go into play. All you can do is do the best that you can with the information that you have. So releasing the outcome is not about not pursuing outcomes. It's about not having the weight of the outcome present in every single moment, right? It's like if I'm having a 3-foot putt and I'm thinking about if I make this or if I don't make this, I might or might not win the tournament. And I put the weight of the tournament on the 3-foot putt, I'm going to get very nervous. But if a 3-foot putt is about the process, it's about my setup, and it's about looking at the hole and just releasing the outcome, then I'm burying the DNA of the outcome, and it's just a 3-foot putt, right? Like the stroke is this long, should be not that bad. So
Yeah.
that's to me what releasing the outcome is really all about.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And one of the things that you just said really quickly, and it's important to go back to, is the best decision at that moment requires you to be present in the moment, requires you to be true to yourself, requires you to be, satisfied with this is what I'm seeing right now. If you're holding on to something in the future, it's like holding on a bumper of a car that's moving too fast while you're standing still. You're just going to pull your arms out, right?
Yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
you can't hold on to that in that way. You have to be present. You have to play the point in front of you. And I think that's such a powerful piece, right?
Yeah. And in every case, I would challenge anybody to come up with a different answer, but I would bet that in every single case, when you're holding out to an outcome, is because somewhere in your identity there is something that depends on the outcome, right? Every investor, I heard this advice early in my real estate investing career. Investors will always forgive market risk. They will never forgive negligence, right? So it's not about the outcome, right? At the end of the day, investors look at vintage, investors look at third party like market conditions, black swan events. There are things that are out of your control. As long as you did the best you could and what was expected of you within the confines of what you can do, it's not about the outcome. It's about being a good fiduciary and making good decisions and being present in the moment. And I guarantee you that if you put the weight of the outcome on the decisions you're making every day, you're probably not going to be the best decision maker because of the emotional stress that you're going to be under.
And you're not being true to yourself because
That's right.
you're just attaching to an outcome. You're attaching
That's right.
your identity to something that hasn't happened as opposed to who you really are. And one of the big pieces of all of this is becoming who you really are, being in that becoming state and being in a flexible enough environment where you are present to what's actually happening right now. I mean, one of the key takeaways of Joe's work is that you're not hardwired to be the same person forever, right?
That's right.
So
Yeah, the concept of neuroplasticity and the fact that your brain can change, right? Like for a long time, people thought that once you were wired a certain way, you could not change. But they're finding people in their 80s and 90s that are being able to create new wiring in their brain. And that's central to the fact that you can rewire yourself. And I tell you, I am living testament that you can rewire yourself and change the way that you think.
so what's changed for you after this manifesto? What changed for you after 12/21/23?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that changed. I mean, first of all, I compete in golf freer than I ever have, which means that I enjoy the game a lot more. I was a competitive tennis player. Part of what's woven into the story is, I mean, I had a very loving dad that I'm very grateful for. He passed away in 2010, very young, but he was a very hands-on dad and a very loving dad. And he didn't give me a choice. I had to play tennis, right? For him, he didn't know if he was going to be able to pay for college in the States, and being a top standout athlete and getting a scholarship was sort of the ticket to go to college in the States. And he had a plan, and the fact that I didn't want to play tennis didn't matter. Like, you're going to play tennis and you're going to win. And so that was part of that wiring, right? Of outcomes are what mattered, not what I wanted to do, because I did not want to play tennis. So later in life, when I had an opportunity to play a sport that I actually really am passionate about, and then I found myself competing and having some of the old wiring come back of nerves and anxiety. It has been a theater in which I've been able to conquer old demons and to change the wiring in my mind to be able to play and compete uh, absolutely truly relaxed. And it's been awesome, right? To me, it's sort of like a mulligan, right? Or a take two to my original athletic career when I competed with all this stress and all this anxiety and all these nerves, and to be able to now do it from a different place. So that's absolutely something that has changed. And something else that has changed is, I allowed myself to make some professional changes that for people from the outside were probably head scratchers, right? I decided to exit my real estate investment partnership and pursue a tech startup with my brother as co-founders for some algorithms that my father had invented. It's sort of a long story, but people from the outside were like, "What is this guy doing?" Right? Like, he's riding a gold wave. But it's not about the gold, right? It's about pursuing what you're truly passionate about, what makes you feel good in the morning when you wake up, and having the guts to go for it, right? And out at the end of the day, I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. I wanted to be able to pursue my life congruent with my values. And when you have four partners, by definition, you have to come to some levels of compromise. And so it was some big decisions that I changed from 2023 until today. So I mean, a lot changed, but I sleep much better at night, and I have a lot less stress.
That's awesome. I can
Yeah.
see that. I can see that you do. Um, to close off, as we get to this stage of each episode, we evoke gratitude, and that's a powerful Joe Dispenza thought. But our inspiration for this comes from John Rulin, who was a great friend of the show. 11 years ago, shared a napkin with us that says, "What you appreciate appreciates." And
Well, I like that.
yeah, so he passed suddenly about a year ago. And since that time, we've been shouting out John and the legacy that he's created with his book, Giftology, and the work that he's done in the world, to ask each of our guests to lay some appreciation on someone or some people that are important to you. Who would you like to appreciate today?
I mean, I guess because of the natural way that I was able to already express a tremendous amount of appreciation for my wife. I mean, she's definitely number one. But just now, as you asked me, what came to me is, I really appreciate the human experience. I really do. I really am a believer that we were put on this earth for a reason. I believe that we collectively, as humanity, have a genuine responsibility to this creation, independent of what dogma or other form of understanding you have. I think we can all agree that we all have a purpose to be here, and I think that that purpose individually is to learn to love yourself, and I think collectively is to elevate our consciousness and our human experience. And I think that to the extent that we can all do that and we can actually appreciate that, we can probably better understand our neighbor. We can probably have more empathy to those going through a tough time, because it's not about just me getting ahead. It genuinely is about elevating this human experience and making it better for the other guy, and leaving it better for the next generation, and paying it forward, not out of a sense of obligation or because of what I'm going to get out of it, but because genuinely we have an opportunity to make this world a better place. And I think that it's something I truly appreciate.
I love that. That's great. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you.
I want to thank Juan DeAngulo for joining me on Paper Napkin Wisdom today and sharing this powerful truth. I am true to myself and I release the outcome. So what stood out for me in this conversation was that he showed that authenticity is the anchor. When we act from who we are, leadership becomes clearer and lighter. He reminded us that gripping results too tightly breeds anxiety, while focusing on process brings peace and performance. He revealed that resilience isn't a trait, but a practice built by showing up authentically day after day. He reminded us that systems and culture only thrive when rooted in human connection. So here's a challenge for you. Grab a napkin and write down the one area in your life or business where you need to be more true to yourself. Then ask, what would it look like to release the outcome here? If you feel like it, share it on social with the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'd love to see it, and I know others would too. If this conversation with Juan resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share this episode with someone else who needs to hear it. That's how these ideas spread. One napkin, one shift, one leader at a time. And remember, when you align with your truth and release the outcome, you create space for freedom, growth, and results that go beyond what you imagine. Until next time, keep turning small ideas into big results and make it a great day.